with the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. That's at 9 a.m. and noon Eastern on Sunday. Until then, you can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on the TikTok at Jake Tapper. You can tweet the show at the Lead CNN. If you ever miss an episode of The Lead, you can listen to The Lead wherever you get your podcasts. All 2 hours, just sitting there for you to enjoy on a hot summer day. Our coverage continues now with Wolf Blitzer. He's right next door in a place I like to call the Situation Room. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Happening now, demonstrations at the U.S. Supreme Court, where 50 years of federal abortion rights for women have been struck down. We're getting new reaction to the ruling overturning Roe versus Wade, looking at the consequences for the nation and the legal, political, and health battles ahead. Also tonight, the House gives final approval to the first federal gun safety bill in decades. As President Biden prepares to sign it into law, will it make a difference in the epidemic of gun violence here in the United States? I'll ask the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. We begin with the U.S. Supreme Court decision undoing a half-century-old precedent and ending a woman's guaranteed federal right to an abortion. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider has more on the ruling and the ramifications.
Hell no, we don't need Roe!
Roe v. Wade, no longer the law of the land, with the Supreme Court overturning nearly 50 years of precedent, the court eliminating the constitutional right to an abortion and leaving all decisions concerning abortion rights to individual states. The final 5-4 majority opinion strikingly similar to the draft from Justice Samuel Alito that was leaked last month. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. In a dissenting opinion, the court's liberal justices lament the current state of the conservative court, saying, with sorrow, for this court, but more for the many millions of American women who have today lost a fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent. The monumental move made possible by a conservative supermajority, including 3 of Donald Trump's nominees. Chief Justice John Roberts diverging somewhat from the majority, voting to uphold Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, but stopping short of overturning Roe v. Wade. The decision is a turn for 2 of the justices who voted to overturn Roe after they seemed to indicate at their confirmation hearings they wouldn't.
It is an important precedent of the Supreme Court.
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
We won't go back!
Democrats, including President Biden, are outraged.
This is not over.
And urging voters to back candidates who back abortion rights in the midterm elections.
How about those justices coming before the senators and saying that they respected the precedent of the court? This cruel ruling is outrageous and heart-wrenching, but make no mistake, it's all on the ballot in November.
What do we want? Abortion rights!
Protests are popping up around the country as individual states are set to move rapidly. 26 states are likely to ban abortion completely, including 13 states that have trigger laws on the books, which set abortion bans into motion as soon as Roe is overturned. Arkansas's governor tweeting, "We are able now to protect life." And South Dakota's governor responding, "As of today, all abortions are illegal in South Dakota." The Supreme Court's decision also could put other precedents at risk, like the right to same-sex marriage and access to contraception. Justice Clarence Thomas explicitly calling for the court to reconsider those other rulings, writing, "We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents." While Alito promised nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. But the liberal justices warning no one should be confident that this majority is done with its work. And already 6 states have banned abortion. 7 more states are poised to ban abortion in the next 30 days. That's pending action from either the courts or state officials. But on the flip side, there are 16 states plus D.C. that have enacted laws that will protect abortion rights. And those states are expecting an influx of patients crossing state lines to seek abortion services. Wolf?
Jessica Schneider reporting from the Supreme Court. Thank you very much. Also tonight, President Biden is warning that the Supreme Court's decision is putting the health and the lives of women here in the United States at risk. Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, the White House has been bracing for this Supreme Court decision. Tell our viewers what else you're learning, what other reaction you're getting.
Yeah, well, the White House had really been steeling themselves for this decision to come down ever since that draft opinion leaked several weeks ago. So much so that President Biden really already had a speech written when the ruling came down today. He just reviewed it after being briefed by his chief of staff on the final ruling, made a few changes to his speech, and then came out and declared it this sad, solemn day for America, where you're right, Wolf. He said that the health and lives of women are now at risk. And he talked about the fact that justices for decades have upheld this ruling. Justices who he noted had been appointed by both Republicans and Democrats. But he said that changed, Wolf, and he said something today that he doesn't often do, which is invoking the name of his predecessor.
It's a sad day for the court and for the country. Now, with Roe gone, let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, who were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country.
Of course, Wolf, now the question for the White House is what they are going to do in response to this. The president today talked about some measures, talking about the Justice Department defending the rights of women who want to travel out of state if they can't get an abortion in their home state to go to another state. He talked about eliminating barriers to access to abortion medication that you can get in the mail. But really, there is only so much the president can do. There's no executive action that he can sign that can restore this constitutional right that was taken away with this ruling from the Supreme Court today, which is why you saw President Biden urging Americans who believe in the right to have an abortion, the right to choose, to go and vote come November in the midterm elections, telling them to elect more pro-choice lawmakers and saying that they should make no mistake, he does believe Roe versus Wade is on the ballot this November, Wolf.
Yeah, we're showing our viewers pictures of demonstrations in many cities all across the country right now. Caitlin Collins at the White House, thank you very much. Let's bring in our team of legal analysts, Jeffrey Toobin, Laura Coates, and Jennifer Rogers. Laura, what does today's ruling mean for millions of American women?
It means that we woke up with certain rights and we're going to go to bed with less rights than our grandmothers had, our mothers had. In some instances, including myself, my great-grandmother had. And this is something that essentially the Supreme Court is saying, actually, you never should have had that right in the first place. It was so egregiously wrongly decided that those rights never should have existed in the first instance. The problem, of course, is that while many people might look at it right now and say these are the rights impacting women, there are a lot of things now on the horizon that under that same judicial philosophy that if it wasn't part of the nation's long-rooted history, then it should never have existed. Well, that's going to include things like same-sex marriage and same-sex sexual relations. It could include things like contraception and marriage, and could extend beyond to things such as interracial marriage as well. This is, in fact, a solemn day because it seemed as though the rights that we thought we had never existed at all, according to the majority of the Supreme Court.
You make an important point. You know, Jennifer, you point out that in the rare instances when the Supreme Court has actually reversed itself, it's typically been done to grant more rights, not take them away. So how unprecedented is this decision today?
Well, it's completely unprecedented. It's really a new low for the court, Wolf, because that's exactly right. Never before has the court, in one case, Roe, recognized a constitutional right that it identifies in the case, and then later reversing that, saying, sorry, we gave you this right, you've held it for 49 years, and now it's gone. The Supreme Court has made mistakes before, they've made grievous mistakes before, but they have never done this. It really is a historic low for the court.
That's absolutely right. You know, Jeffrey, this opinion states that, I'm quoting now, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. That's a quote from the opinion. Were you surprised to see this so closely echo the leaked draft opinion we all saw weeks ago from Justice Alito?
Well, not really, because this is what Justice Alito has felt for many years. It's what Justice Thomas has felt for many years. And Donald Trump, when he ran for president, he said, I am going to appoint justices to the court who will vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. Alito, Thomas, plus 3 Trump justices, that gets you to 5, and that's a majority. And you know, this has been a goal of the conservative movement for many years. This is the reason why conservatives stood by Donald Trump despite all the scandals, despite his loose personal life, they got what they wanted out of the Trump presidency today.
Yeah, they certainly did. You know, Laura, does this ruling open the floodgates potentially for lawsuits against abortion providers or indeed anyone who helps a woman get an abortion?
It does, and also presents interstate conflicts now in terms of whether somebody in one state is helping a person in another state. What are the implications there? It really is going to be not just legal chaos, Wolf, but really a prosecutor's nightmare in the sense of how is one to enforce this, either in civil lawsuits, of course, or even in the criminal context. It's one thing to outlaw abortion, but how will you criminalize abortion? Because that's the next leap here. How do you solve your cases? How do you prove your cases? How do you demonstrate if the womb itself is going to be the so-called crime scene? How do you exactly prove that an illegal abortion has been occurred or that it's been aided in some meaningful way by somebody without trampling on other privacy interests, including doctor-patient confidentiality and other things as well? Is it surveillance? Are fertility app tracking devices now going to be subpoenaed? I mean, from an enforcement standpoint, it really is unprecedented.
And there's already an arms race among states to have the strictest anti-abortion laws, the ones that reach the most extensively across state lines to try to criminalize efforts to help women have abortions. So one of the issues to keep an eye on here is, you know, if someone in a state where abortion is legal helps someone get an abortion, is that person in New York, say, a legalized abortion state, is that person going to be prosecuted in Oklahoma or Missouri where where abortion and helping getting an abortion is illegal? This this is going to be a legal fight that goes on and on for probably the rest of all of our lifetime.
And Jeffrey, I want to just follow up with you because you're an expert on the Supreme Court. Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, wrote this, and I'm quoting him now: "In future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell." What does that mean as far as you're concerned?
Well, what it means is Justice Alito's opinion says we are, in effect, we are only going to recognize constitutional rights that are actually mentioned in the Constitution. The Constitution does not use the word abortion. Abortion is not protected. Those three cases involve constitutional rights that the court has recognized that are not in the Constitution. Griswold was the right of married people to buy contraception. Obergefell was the right to same-sex marriage. Lawrence v. Texas was same-sex sexual relations. None of that is mentioned in the Constitution, and Justice Thomas wants to see all those protections go away. You know, that is entirely consistent with today's decision, and it's next on the conservative agenda in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I want you and our viewers to watch how Trump-nominated Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh previously spoke about Roe versus Wade during their confirmation hearings. Listen to this.
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Been reaffirmed many times.
So did they actually lie during those confirmation hearings?
Well, if you mean did they mislead the senators, were they disingenuous, then yes. If you mean did they lie, like are they prosecutable for perjury, the answer has to be no, because they didn't state any facts that you could provably say were false at the time. But there's no question, I mean, particularly Gorsuch with that tone in his voice, how dare you accuse me of something? I mean, they've been wanting to do this for a long time. This is not a surprise, we've seen it coming. And the fact that they didn't admit it in their confirmation hearings is frankly par for the course these days, but is adding to the frustration of people today.
And Susan Collins, who was the swing vote in the Kavanaugh confirmation, she said her entire vote was based on the fact that she believed this fairy tale that Brett Kavanaugh was telling her. But that got Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court.
Yep, that's what happened today. All right, Jennifer Rogers, Jeffrey Toobin, Laura Coates, guys, thank you very, very much. Just ahead, we'll have much more on the U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade and the protests against it taking place across the country tonight. Plus, Congress passes the first major federal gun safety bill in decades. We're going to talk about it with the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams. He's standing by to join us live. We'll be right back.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
The missile struck right here.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
What is your interpretation of Putin's intention? What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? What do you think an end to this looks like?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
Chicago's South Side can sometimes carry a difficult, if not dangerous, reputation.
The threats in our community are numerous. There's threats of violence with gangs, with family members. There's guns. There's inequities in the system where students can't even go outside.
But in recent years, a new problem has come to light: human trafficking.
Human trafficking is something that affects every single person, no matter what age, no matter what gender, no matter what identity. It affects every single person.
But inside the brick walls of the Curie Metropolitan High School, a talented group of students has decided to do something about it. The students are part of a collective called Performers for Change. They're led by dance instructor Melinda Wilson.
Yes.
For the students, it's a chance to express themselves while educating their classmates. For Wilson, it's a chance to bring what some might consider a taboo topic out of the shadows.
I hope that it gets teens to really understand the dynamic of how serious and horrific these crimes are.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those going the extra mile, using their platforms for good. CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett. Sunday.
We're following protests across the country tonight against the U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. Also tonight, the first major federal gun safety bill passed by Congress in decades is awaiting President Biden's signature. It's a very significant bipartisan breakthrough coming on the heels of mass shootings that increased pressure on lawmakers to take action. CNN congressional correspondent Jessica Dean is joining us from Capitol Hill right now. Jessica, Democrats are celebrating the bill's passage, even though it falls far short of what most of them actually wanted.
That's right, Wolf. There's a lot of things in this bill that Democrats have wanted for years that didn't make it in. An assault weapons ban among them, raising the minimum age to purchase guns in this country. But what they have tried to focus on is what they did get. And one of the lead negotiators, Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, has said time and time again, he's told us, I don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good, and I'm not going to support something that isn't meaty, isn't going to actually save lives. So that was really on the minds of him and Kyrsten Sinema as they negotiated with their Republican colleagues, John Cornyn and Thom Tillis, to get this bipartisan legislation. And we should note what it does do. It does close the so-called boyfriend loophole. That means that anyone convicted of domestic violence will no longer be able to get their hands on a gun. And that is something that has vexed lawmakers for years up here. They haven't been able to find a way through on that. It is also going to put forth significant funding for mental health, for school safety, for community safety. It's going to put a federal ban on the purchase of straw guns and gun trafficking. So it's going to do a number of things, including incentivize states for crisis intervention programs, something like a red flag law, Wolf. So there's a lot here. We should also note quickly before I go, 14 House GOP members stepping forward to join their Democratic colleagues going against their leadership, who didn't just come out against this, but were actively whipping against the bill. But again, 14 House GOP members coming forward to support this legislation, which now heads to President Biden's desk.
And he is expected to sign it very, very soon. All right, Jessica Dean, thank you very, very much. Let's discuss what's going on with the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams. He's joining us live. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, we have a lot to discuss, but let's start with today's vote. This marks, as I noted, the first time in decades that Congress has been able to act on gun safety here in the United States. How far do you think this will go in helping curb gun violence in New York City?
Well, it's clear, Wolf, that I state over and over again that there are many rivers that feed the sea of violence, and particularly gun violence. We dam one of those rivers today with this legislation, but there are more to go. They're on all different levels, on state, federal, and city levels. But let's continue to evolve to have a city and country free of this type of violence.
This, of course, comes after yesterday's U.S. Supreme Court decision striking down a century-old New York state law, massively now expanding gun rights in New York. Does this put New Yorkers, from your perspective, Mayor, in greater danger?
Without a doubt. And it's 2 days in a row that we saw our Chief Justice, our Supreme Court, really go after our safety. 2 days in a row, we've witnessed them go against the American people. And 2 days in a row, we saw them carry out politics over the true role that the Supreme Court can take. This is unimaginable when you think about how this impacts New York City. We are stating that one of the most difficult places to keep guns out of the hands of people who are dangerous. We are now stating that we're going to make it more difficult for police officers.
And you're a former police officer yourself. I know you called today's U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade a direct attack on women. But you also had a message that anyone seeking abortions around the country, in your words, is welcome to come to New York City. Do you see New York City as a safe haven, potentially, for abortion services?
Yes, we do. And we made it clear when we first heard that this ruling was leaked, we started putting things in place that's going to protect women who are seeking a safe haven, a city that is going to allow them to have control over their bodies. We're going to make sure that there's counseling. We're going to utilize our website to give free information. And we're going to make sure that this is a place where our healthcare system are going to support those who want to make these important decisions.
You shared something today very, very personal, that as a teenager, your then girlfriend decided to get an abortion. Why did you decide, Mayor, to open up about this today?
Because this was a real moment, as many of my leaders in my administration, 5 of my deputy mayors are women, and some of them shared some very personal moments. And people need to know that every time an individual makes a decision or woman makes a decision to terminate a pregnancy, there's a story behind it. And my life would have been different, and the child that was born would have been different. And Linda made an important decision that I believe she had the right to do because it was her body, and she made that decision based on where I was in my life.
The New York City Mayor, Eric Adams, thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue this conversation to be sure. And we see demonstrations in your city, in New York City right now in the aftermath of this U.S. Supreme Court decision. Appreciate it very much. Coming up, we're tracking these demonstrations around the country. Look at the pictures we're showing you right now as Americans react to the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade. We'll also get reaction to the ruling from the chair of the House Progressive Caucus, Representative Pramila Jayapal. She's been very personal on this issue as well.
It is forecasted that about 40% of the population in the world will suffer from water shortages in 2050 due to climate change and population growth. And water is one of nature's greatest gift. So we decided to upgrade our water intensity by 50% and replenish more water than we use in our own plants globally by 2050. As a matter of fact, we've been working on this almost for 20 years by setting up a local watershed conservation and education for children. We are moving toward the international and global expansion. We want to raise awareness in the world that water shortages will come, and we have to be careful. We have to take action together. So we want to lead this initiative.
All new Inside Africa. Go inside the inventive minds, evolving places, and creative trends of the Africa you need to know now. Ugandan tech pioneers create new ways of learning.
We envision a world where all children have equitable access to high-quality education.
Inside Africa on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
The world's biggest business stories from every corner of the globe. Marketplace Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, today on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN Partner Hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Vedika Sood in New Delhi, and this is CNN.
All right, these are live pictures coming in from cities all across the United States. Protesters are gathering to vent their views on today's historic and truly monumental ruling striking down Roe versus Wade. The decision wipes out the federally guaranteed right to an abortion that women have had here in the United States for half a century. Let's discuss this issue and more with the chair of the House Progressive Caucus, Democratic Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington State. Representative, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is very personal for you as well. What does today's ruling by the Supreme Court mean for American women?
Wolf, this is a catastrophic decision. This decision strips away the freedoms, the liberties, and the status of women across this country in this decision by saying that a woman is going to be forced to have a pregnancy, forced to carry a fetus to term, forced to deal with all the consequences of that with no autonomous freedom to make her own choice, to decide when, whether, and with whom she's going to have a child. It is a remarkable insult and assault on women's rights. But it's not only that, Wolf, it's also all of the other things that are contained within this decision, because the dissenting opinion makes it very clear that reproductive freedom is tied to all the other autonomies that a woman enjoys. So whether or not we have a career and how we want to have a career, how we're going to be back in the workplace, all of those things are also contained here, added to, of course, the fact that Justice Thomas's concurring opinion very much says clearly that this is not the end. If the arguments that are made in the majority's opinion that essentially none of these things are protected unless they were protected in the Constitution at the beginning, or even ratified in the 14th Amendment, which, by the way, ratified by men, not by people, ratified by men, then same-sex marriage, contraception, and interracial marriage all also at stake here.
Yeah, lots at stake right now. You're absolutely right. You have opened up very publicly and very personally about the very difficult decision you made to have an abortion when that pregnancy was deemed high risk to your health. Based on what you went through, Congresswoman, what are the implications now that millions of others will no longer have that choice that you had?
Well, Wolf, I'm one of the 1 in 4 women across this country who has had an abortion. And I had a child at the time who was extremely ill. And I wrote about the, for me, heart-wrenching decision that I had to make about whether I was capable of having another child, whether my life would be protected, whether the child's life would be protected, all of the things that went into that. And I think as you look at what's going to happen now, because there are 13 states that have these trigger laws that are going to go into effect immediately or within the next 30 days, another 7 states. This is tens of millions of women across this country who are now not going to be able to get an abortion because it will be banned in their states. And if they're poor women living with very few means, they're not going to have the money to be able to travel to another state, like my state of Washington, where we are still protecting the right to an abortion. And if you look specifically at maternal mortality, and the court points this out in the dissenting opinion, 33% of Black women would suffer severe maternal mortality consequences by a ban to abortion. 13% of white women, 33% of Black women. So I think this is a really, really important thing to look at, not just that everyone's freedoms are being stripped away, but that the freedoms of Black women, brown women, indigenous women, poor women across this country, particularly infringed upon. And it's not that abortion's going to go away, Wolf. Let me tell you, abortion is not going to go away. What's going to happen is it's not going to be legal anymore. And that means more deaths and more illegal abortions, and more pregnancies brought to term when people don't have the resources to do that.
The article you wrote in the New York Times the story of my abortion. Very, very moving. I recommend to our viewers that they read it. Very important. Representative Pramila Jayapal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Just ahead, former President Trump's dangerous relationship with the U.S. Justice Department and how he tried to use it to keep his grip on power. Stand by.
This Chinese national treasure is more endangered than the panda. Its lichen-covered forest home at risk. In the high-altitude woodlands of southwest China's Yunnan province, the Yunnan golden monkeys, or black snub-nosed monkeys, are fighting for survival. Almost 100 monkeys are killed by hunters every year in the region, according to the Nature Conservancy.
Villagers rely on mountains. In the old days, they would often climb up the mountains for hunting and other activities such as gathering and cutting trees.
But as part of a forest monitoring campaign, Xu Hao trains local villagers to patrol the monkey's habitat and look for old wire traps.
This is the wire trap. Villagers tie it to the tree and use this to catch some animals.
His team has installed over 100 infrared cameras in the forest to monitor the monkeys, and golden monkey populations in the region are finally increasing, says Li Peng.
This monkey is one of the only kind of animals living in this high altitude. So the existence of this species is kind of important and critical to the whole world.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see.
Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition.
It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Protests are happening all across the United States tonight after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. You're looking at live pictures coming in. We're following that story. Also tonight, a source is now telling CNN that Arizona Republican Party Chair Kelly Ward and her husband have been subpoenaed. It's part of the federal investigation into the effort to appoint fake electors to try to keep former President Trump in office following his election loss to Joe Biden. CNN's Brian Todd is here with a closer look at how Trump himself tried to misuse the U.S. Justice Department to hold on illegally to power. Brian, what are you learning?
Wolf, this week there was jarring detail during hearings conducted by the House January 6th committee, detail about Donald Trump's relentless pressure on the Justice Department from early in his term to those final days. The dangerous moves of a desperate, defeated president, trying to get the Department of Justice to do his bidding. This week's hearings of the House Select Committee on January 6th focused partly on Donald Trump's efforts after the 2020 election and before the January 6th attack on the Capitol to change the election results, using that department as his lever.
The president's entreaties became more urgent. He became more adamant that we weren't doing our job. We need to step up and do our job.
Part of a pattern that former Trump administration officials and outside analysts say Donald Trump exhibited almost from the moment he stepped into the Oval Office.
The behavior was very dangerous. The former president saw the Department of Justice as an institution that should help his presidency, and the Attorney General as someone who worked for him rather than who protected the law.
Welcome to the White House.
Early on, Trump relentlessly pressured his first Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to oversee the Russia investigation. When Sessions refused and recused himself, Trump publicly insulted him repeatedly, like in an interview with Fox News.
I put an Attorney General that never took control of the Justice Department.
Trump eventually fired Sessions.
Oh, and there's James. He's become more famous than me.
Soon after taking office, Trump pressured then FBI Director James Comey to drop an investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Comey later claimed Trump had made a personal demand of him.
I got the sense my job would be contingent upon how he felt I conducted myself and whether I demonstrated loyalty.
Trump denied asking for Comey's loyalty, but ended up firing Comey, later saying he was frustrated over the ongoing Russia probe. Later, after then Attorney General Bill Barr, who had been a loyalist, finally said he saw no evidence of widespread election fraud in 2020, Trump called Barr, quote, stupid, a coward, a swamp creature. According to the Mueller report, Trump once asked why the Department of Justice didn't fight for him the way he believed then Attorney General Robert Kennedy fought for his brother while John Kennedy was president. Experts say that's not how the relationship between a president and an attorney general should be.
There's a long-standing practice in government that the president of the attorney general should not ever be communicating about cases. President Trump violated that pretty repeatedly throughout his administration.
The analysts we spoke to are worried about the imprint Trump's behavior will leave on future presidents. They say that because Trump really hasn't been held accountable for his behavior with the Justice Department, that future presidents may think they can get away with similar tactics. Wolf?
Brian Todd reporting from Capitol Hill. Thank you very much. Let's dig deeper into all of this. Joining us, CNN senior law enforcement analyst, the former FBI Deputy Director, Andrew McCabe. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Does all that line up with your firsthand experience as someone who actually served in the FBI within the Justice Department under Trump?
Absolutely, it does. I was marveling listening to Brian's piece about how well that he's captured the fact that this administration subjected the Department of Justice and the FBI to relentless pressure from the very earliest days of the administration. And although our witnesses in the hearing yesterday told a compelling story about how they stood up to those final issuances of pressure by the White House around the January 6th issue. Let's not forget that the department had a very checkered past over those 4 years in terms of responding to that pressure. When the White House demanded that Attorney General Sessions essentially use the Justice Department to cook up justification for the Muslim travel ban, Jeff Sessions did exactly that. I remember Wolf sitting in meetings with the Attorney General Sessions on several occasions where we would be chastised and reminded that he thought our job was to do the president's agenda, was to push the president's agenda. We had a very different understanding of what our job was. Of course, as FBI agents, pushing the president's agenda is not part of that. So I think although yesterday's testimony was compelling and it's ultimately a story of individuals who stood up to that withering pressure at a very important time, the entire history of the Justice Department over the 4 years of the Trump administration is much more checkered.
As you correctly point out, Andrew, Trump treated the Justice Department, and you worked there, like his own personal legal team. Does it actually endanger American democracy for that kind of behavior to go unpunished?
It absolutely does. And look, we know that it does because we've seen so many examples of it over those 4 years of the Trump administration. So if we now refuse to hold that administration, the people in it who helped the president execute those strategies, people like Jeff Clark, like John Eastman, like Rudy Giuliani, and ultimately the former president himself, if they walk away from this abuse of this institution of America, the Department of Justice, without any sort of accountability, what sort of message does that send to the next person that holds that office who might have the same sort of warped understanding about the true purpose of the DOJ?
As you know, Andrew, federal agents have now raided the home of Jeffrey Clark, a former high-level Justice Department official who was working to try to advance Trump's election lies. They've issued subpoenas related to the fake electoral scheme that was going on. What does that tell you?
It tells you, Wolf, that this is a very dynamic, ongoing, and well-developed criminal case. You don't start your case by going to a federal judge and making the argument that you have probable cause to believe that there is evidence of a crime in the residence of a former high-level DOJ official, in this case, Jeff Clark. So there was a lot of work and investigation that got the FBI to that point, that they were able to make that argument successfully to a federal judge. And I would also say, Wolf, one of the things that I'm really looking for as this story continues to develop is more about the role of an individual named Ken Kuklowski, who was sent from the White House to work in the Department of Justice for Jeffrey Clark on December 15th, presumably for the purpose of advancing this plot.
Yeah, I'm anxious to know more about that as well. Thanks very much, Andrew McCabe, for joining us. Coming up, we're following protests right now across the United States against the U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. Stand by.
コーヒーの持つ力って人と人をつなぐ力だと思ってて、うちの会社のビジョンっていうのは日本のコーヒーといえばフィロコフィアってなることなんですよ。からそれを達成するには世界に向けた通販が必要だったんですよね。
I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN.
We share this place, we all belong.
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. Pro athletes set up sports academies to elevate young players.
The Uprise is the avenue to get as many people as possible the opportunities that they ordinarily wouldn't have had.
African Voices Changemakers, only on CNN, in association with Glow.
My name is Øystein Jensen. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Odfjell SE. It is important that shipping becomes sustainable. It is important that shipping moves towards zero because we are a part of the global value chain. We represent 2.8% of the total emission, and that emissions will still grow as the shipping industry will grow because the global demand for transportation is growing. And so the only solution is actually to go zero. Thank you to Sustainability Live. Being an event like this, I believe that is important because it gives you the wider understanding of the challenge. It gives us insight to areas that we haven't thought about, because this challenge is nothing one company can solve by themselves. So that's why we need to collaborate, and we need to collaborate across the industry.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those going the extra mile, using their platforms for good. CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett, Sunday.
Looking at live pictures of large crowds demonstrating in cities all across the United States at this hour, protesting the U.S. Supreme Court ruling today that ended 50 years of a federal right for women and girls here in the United States to have an abortion. CNN's Nick Valencia is following developments for us in Atlanta right now. Nick, what are you seeing and what are you hearing there?
Hey there, Wolf. A major turnout here on the streets of Atlanta. As you can see behind me, several hundred people have turned out. This is actually two demonstrations that have merged into one, and just in the last several minutes, they've blocked a road here in front of the Georgia State Capitol. I'm going to get out of the way here so you can just see the size of this crowd here. As I mentioned, one of these demonstrations started in front of CNN Center, and they marched several miles over here to the state capitol. And while abortion is still legal for now in the state of Georgia, it is not one of those trigger law states. There is some fears about the legal ramifications that today's ruling could have on a 2019 bill that was passed here by Republican Governor Brian Kemp. That so-called heartbeat bill, which bans abortions after a heartbeat can be detected in a fetus at around 6 weeks, has been blocked by lower courts. But today's decision by the Supreme Court will, of course, and no doubt, have legal ramifications on that bill. That's what the fear is here among this group. They fear that a right to abortion will be taken away from women in this state. So they showed up here in mass and in numbers to protest today's ruling. Wolf.
All right, Nick Valencia in Atlanta for us. Nick, thanks very much from Atlanta. Let's head over to Austin, Texas right now. Another of the many U.S. cities seeing these protests unfold tonight. CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is on the scene for us. Shimon, give us what's going on over there.
Well, Wolf, several hundred people have now gathered here in downtown Austin outside of the federal courthouse. And let me just show you, there's several hundred people gathered here, Wolf, and you can see all the way through this crowd. They are listening to speakers. We've heard from women talk about their situations, various situations that they've been in. One woman talked about being raped by her husband and being forced to carry her children. We've heard other stories. And really, Wolf, what you're hearing here are just stories of fear, stories of frustration. Many of the women really just scared for their future. We've heard from young kids. We've heard from older folk here, people who have fought for years and years for the right for abortion rights. The other thing, one of the things that we keep hearing from people here, Wolf, is that who this is going to affect the most here in Texas, certainly. And it's women who can't travel out of the state, women who can't afford to travel out of the state. That is the biggest concern. Of course, Texas, as of today, basically, abortion is illegal here in Texas. You know, Texas has been at the forefront of abortion rights. They've been fighting many of the laws and the different rules and the things that the governor has done and state legislators have done. So they say they're going to continue to fight. Some of them suggesting voting out the legislators here. Of course, the governor, the Republican governor. But the one overall theme, Wolf, I think that we're seeing all across the country and certainly here is fear and anger, Wolf.
All right, we'll stay in close touch with you. Shimon Prokupecz in Austin, Texas for us. Thank you.